The United States will be the guardians of the Strait of Hormuz, but to ensure we get ships through, you're going to have to help pay 20% to ensure safe passage, because that's a huge outlay for the U.S. military. Iran fires back going, see, charging tolls to go through the strait. You're right, but we're going to charge a lot less than 20%. Well, let's make heads or tails of all of this. Joining us right now from the Heritage Foundation, retired U.S. Navy Captain Brent Sadler, our guest here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So I kind of gave a brief synopsis of where we were in the last 24 hours. What are you reading in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, just to kind of address, because I get this question a lot since the last 24 hours, on is it a toll or not to toll? The United States has always been, back to the founding fathers, all about freedom of navigation and open commerce. I mean, it's kind of like one of our founding principles were, and then trying to actually in the Constitution. So it's important to kind of parse what the president's saying and kind of give a little context. What the Iranians are doing is a toll. They're pay us or we'll attack you. It's compelled. On the U.S. side, it's more like, hey, well, if you want our protection to go through there, you're going to have to help us by paying a service fee charge so that we can actually provide that service. Yeah, for the cost. Lots of ways to skin that cat. There's a lot of countries in the Gulf that are becoming very strong and very active participants in this war against Iran. Their economies are tied to that trade as well. Bahrain, Kuwait provide bases along with Saudi Arabia, so they can actually do what's called host nation support. And a lot of that cost of sustaining that naval and military presence can be actually mitigated through that. We do that all in our bases and security treaties that we have with other countries. So it's not the same thing, both in concept, principle, and even in theory. So want to make sure that your listeners hear that. That's not a fee.
Okay, so my way of looking at it was that this is kind of like extortion from a local gang. Hey, pay us protection money and we won't burn down your store. And if you don't pay us, we're going to burn down your store. That's what I think Iran's doing. The United States is, hey, listen, you need protection from Iran. You're going to have to help defer the cost of that because this benefits you. We're all for freedom of navigation, and that's been one of the focal points of the U.S. Navy, but this is getting expensive. And if Europe and our NATO allies don't want to help, we need some people to help defer the cost because this is a cost benefit to you.
Yeah, we did it in the 80s with Operation Praying Mantis during the tanker wars between Iraq and Iran. And so Kuwait reflagged their tankers to U.S. flag. There's a fee that's associated with that. That covers the cost. And since they were U.S. flagged, it enabled us to provide protection. So a similar type of mechanism could be at play here today. It's not something new, and it is fundamentally different than what the Iranians are doing, like you just described.
All right, Captain Brent Sadler joining us right now, retired U.S. Navy, Heritage Foundation expert joining us here on News Radio WRVA. As far as we will now be the guardians of the Strait of Hormuz, there's a lot of different meanings, whether you're an American, and there's a whole completely different meaning if you're in the Middle East, in particular in Iran. Give me the differences of what those definitions and how that statement will reverberate around Tehran.
Yeah, Guardians of the Gulf kind of has an interesting ring to it. It sounds a little bit a little like Hollywood a little bit. But the reality is those partners in the region really rely on, and we actually do very good as a world leader, and also American interests are served best when we are a strong leader pursuing our own interest, because a lot of other countries have the same interest that we do. So I think it actually provides a lot of clarity. Whether or not the name sticks, that's really immaterial. The results on the water and the results in the energy markets, what's matter. And I think you're going to see after this little spike that goes up, once the threat from Iran is completely obliterated, which will take a little bit more time, there's not much left to do. That confidence in the shipping will come back. These fees, these tolls, all this conversation will evaporate, and gas prices will drop pretty substantially because OPEC was holding back production. You had UAE depart on May 1st because of that, and you're going to have a lot more oil on the market. The supply is greater than the demand.
I'm also looking to see what Lloyd's of London and the big insurers are going to do. Is that enough to get them to reissue certificates of insurance to get through the strait. That's my next shoe that I want to see drop. I haven't found anything on that. I think that's very interesting. But the fact that we're calling ourselves the Guardians over there, I think that is a direct shove, not a pushback, not a lean back, but a shove back at Tehran, because it seems like, and the president said this, every time we negotiate and go, okay, let me go double check with my bosses back in Tehran. Oh, I'm sorry, Brent, we can't do that. We have to start all over again. But I think the president just saying enough is enough of you playing this game with us.
Yeah, no, there's two sides of this. One is it is definitely a finger in the eye of the Iranians who use similar kind of language in Farsi as well. So it's kind of a pushback on them, because clearly they can't deliver on that notion, nor enforcement of their tolls very well. But for Americans, I don't think there's much appetite for playing the guardian or the world's policeman either. So there's a caution here as well. But like the Guardians in the movie, it's actually a team. And so we have other allies who do rely on the energy there. They're nearby with military forces. So it's an open team network. So hopefully we'll see others step up as the threat starts to subside and provide some of that guardianship in the straits as well.
Why can't the Iranian negotiators deliver on the agreements they make with the vice president and with Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and they think, okay, great, this MOU's going, we're moving along, and then all of a sudden they go, yeah, we can't do that?
Well, I'd probably say it's just the nature of negotiating when you're dealing with a group like the Iranians in this case. That's pretty much the simplest answer. You're dealing with deceptive, duplicitous, I guess partners, not really partners, but folks on the other end of the table. I'm not sure did that get to your question?
No, it did, because there's the whole thing, and I've seen this written, and I haven't really talked about it a lot, but there are those cultural differences between the Iranians and the Shias and negotiating with people of a different faith. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because then you just open up a bunch of stuff that I think is a distraction, but they're duplicitous, and in that culture, that's okay. In our culture, we look, hey, listen, are you going to be an honest broker or not? And if you're not an honest broker, I'm just going to break away with you. In their culture, they can be duplicitous with us, and there's no moral high ground they lose.
No. I mean, you need to know your adversary as well as knowing yourself to be victorious or to succeed in warfare as well as in negotiations, and understanding who you're dealing with and what their game plan is and what their interests are, the power dynamic. Those are all necessary things for when you go into negotiations. And then to be very shrewd and very aggressive and very persistent in advancing American interest. I mean, that we should not be bashful about that. We should not feel any sense of entitlement in pursuing American interests, because that is what our negotiators and our elected leaders are there for, advancing and making, America more strong and more profitable and more secure.
What does your gut tell you? What do you maybe let me ask this? This is probably a better question. What's your crystal ball say as far as the United States just saying, okay, listen, a lot of people are saying, end this, just finish the job. When it comes to Iran, we can't just stand there and dither. I had somebody the other day tell me, Norman Schwarzkopf knew this. That's why he absolutely got it done as quick as he could before the politicians started dithering back in the States. Are we to the point where the president say, listen, enough is enough. We're just going to finish this thing?
I think he reached that point over the weekend, last week. So what we're seeing now is the military operations to remove the last bit of leverage the IRGC and Tehran had. That's their threat to shipping, because that's really the only leverage they have to actually push back in negotiations. That's going to be removed, and you're going to notice a change in their tone, a change in their negotiating tactics once that reality sets in.
1 minute.
And the attacks must continue as the threat could resurface. And so that shouldn't be a precondition, stopping or pausing military operations against the Iranians while we also negotiate. There is no binary reset in there where you're either negotiating or you're in combat. You can do both. And that, in fact, is the normal state of world events and of actually trying to end a war or conflict. So I think that's where we're at.
Okay, let me just elaborate on that, if you wouldn't mind elaborating on it, because we're thinking of World War II. When you have Japan coming on to the Missouri and signing with MacArthur and Nimitz, we're thinking of uh, Admiral Donitz signing over complete capitulation by Nazi Germany. But the world's has always had these negotiations that go on during conflicts, whether it was the American Revolution, the Korean War is a perfect example. They had talks for years before we figured out what to do over there. So I think the American people are kind of thought, oh, wait a minute, we're just going to win, and then they sign the instrument of surrender. That's not how this is going to work.
No, there's a couple of things going on here. One, we can make a deal with whoever's in Tehran to get near-term agreements. This was the MOU, the ceasefire, because it served our purposes, I guess, at the time. Unfortunately, it served the Iranians' purposes as well, probably a little much too so, as we know now. But the other part of this is until the nature of that regime in Tehran changes, we're always going to have a threat from them. So the other opportunity, the big strategic opportunity, is for the Iranian people to be able to take back their country and actually have government there that's one that we can feel that's not going to threaten American lives or interests, certainly not their neighbors, to include Israel. That's still kind of the long-term goal. And that might require a change of tactic, might require or inform what kind of deal that we cut with the Iranians as we take away their last little bit of leverage over shipping.
Again, the more that you cut off that authoritative regime over there, that allows the people to get underneath their thumb, and we'll see what happens. But I don't think I don't think we're close to that right now. And again, the number one thing, Strait of Hormuz. Brent, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it. Again, if I see Brent Sadler on TV, then I know something's going on. So I appreciate you taking time for us this morning.
No, absolutely. You guys have a great day.
All right, take care. Brent Sadler joining us here. Captain Brent Sadler, retired U.S. Navy from the Heritage Foundation. And that's the big thing. You could talk and fight at the same time, and that's pretty much been the history. I think, again, we just look at the biggest victories the United States has always had, World War II, and we expect everything to go along those lines. We look at World War I. You had the Treaty of Versailles after the fighting was over. A lot of times, these things will go on and they'll negotiate while people are still shooting at each other. And if we expect anything else, I think we just set ourselves up for failure. All right, today's program brought to you in part by our friends at Loan Pronto. So you're stuck